Hey guys, so today I want to discuss some of my absolute favorite books that I have read this year. This is my top 10 books that I have read in all of 2020. So just sit back and get ready to hear me just gush about 10 books that I think everyone needs to read because they're freaking fantastic. These are in no particular order. They're not in a ranking order. These are just the order of which I grabbed them off of my shelf. So that's that. And if I have full reviews, I will link them because some of these books I have full standalone reviews. Some of them I don't, but if I do, I will link them for you guys. The very first one that has made it to my top favorites of 2020 is Fireborn. Y'all, this book was a surprise. I expected to like it, but not as much as I ended up liking it. This is such a good political YA fantasy, and I feel like we don't get that very often. I feel like we don't get politics done well in YA because I feel like we think of it as too juvenile, and then the politics are too advanced, and it's this whole thing. But this book just does it so exceedingly well, and we just have so many tropes that I love, a lost heir, hidden heir, hiding your power type character, and then we have the underdog who is this beaten down, just underprivileged person who just rises up. And we have dragons, and we have a competition, and we have political intrigue abounding. So this is definitely one of my favorite books that I have read. I think it's super underrated. I want more people to read this, especially with the sequel coming out this year. Y'all are sleeping on this book. It is so good. The next book is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. I actually read the entire Poppy War series this year, but The Dragon Republic was my favorite out of all three. All three were 5-star reads, but this one in particular was my absolute favorite of the series. This is an Asian-inspired adult fantasy that is super dark, and it has a lot of focus on gods and shamanism, colonialism, and it is very, very violent. It has a lot of consequences of war. It has just so much packed into this series, and I can't really say too terribly much about it because I don't want to spoil anything because this is the second book, but pick up the first one. It is so freaking fantastic. If I had to rank the books as from least favorite to most favorite, it would be Poppy War, Burning God, and then this one as my absolute favorite, but they're all 5 stars. So it's little nitpicky things making them in that order. But they're just so good. I absolutely love our main character, Ren. She's unlikable, but I like her. And then Katai is my absolute favorite character in this entire series. I could just do with a whole thing from his perspective. That would be fantastic. But if you haven't read this, go pick it up. It is such a good series. And then I got the Illumicrate versions, so I just have to show off that beautiful edge. These are stunning, right? My next favorite book is also a second book in a series, and that is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Stormlight Archives. I did read Way of Kings this year, so this one just kind of inched it out a little bit, but this book is so good. This series is so good. I'm super excited to be reading more of it this year. I'm actually doing a big Cosmere Crab read along with Books Before Death, and I'm one of the co-hosts, so I will be reading Oathbringer with them and a lot of the other Cosmere books that I have not read yet. But this book is fantastic. It has shot to the top of my favorites. This series has shot to the top of my favorites. I don't even know how to describe Stormlight Archives to you if you have not heard of it, but just know it is a very detailed, high, epic adult fantasy that is like 1,000 pages a book, and you get multiple POVs. We follow Kaladin, who used to be a slave. We follow Dalinar, who is aging and one of the brother of a slain king, kind of set out for revenge. We follow Shallan, who is from kind of like a lesser noble family, who's kind of trying to save her family name, and we just get so many amazing characters and moments in this book, and I am excited to continue on. Next up, we have one that was kind of outside of my normal reading zone, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is a standalone fantasy that is very, very whimsical. It is very lyrical. It is a story within a story, and I absolutely devoured this. It is such a strange book. I actually did a full spoiler-free review for this, so this is one I will link for you, but it's just such a cool story, and it's one that I think will hold up on reread. It's confusing, but there's like little hints and threads throughout the book that I think are going to be picked up better on a reread. We're following Zachary, who is a video game designer. He's in school for it, and he finds this book in the library of his college where he's in it. So he's in the story, and he's really confused, and he's trying to figure out why a story from his life is in this book. And then he's kind of thrust into this mystery where there's an underground library that kind of holds all the stories in the world. And it is just a crazy, beautiful, lyrical, whimsical story. And it's one of those where just kind of throw your logic aside and just enjoy the ride, because this book is beautiful. Another favorite of mine for the year is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is a historical fantasy. It is also a standalone by V.E. Schwab, and it was I think it took her 10 years to write this. This is her magnum opus that she's been working on and pouring her heart into forever. And we start out following Addie, and I think it's 14th century France, and she's basically being forced into marriage, and she don't want none of that, so she runs away and ends up making a deal with the darkness to live forever. But everyone will forget her after she's away from them. So no one can remember her. She can't leave a mark on the world, and we get to explore how deep that goes, not just with no one remembering her, but with her not being able to leave a mark on the world. And then about halfway through the book, some things change. The whole synopsis of the book that I heard, I think, is a little overly spoilery, so just know going in that this is a slower paced book that really focuses on setting and character development, and it's just beautiful. I have a full review of this if you want to watch it. I will link that for you because I loved this book. Moving on to another V.E. Schwab book that I absolutely loved this year is Vicious. There's just something about Victor Vale that I fell in love with this year. He is the quintessential anti-hero, and I am here for it. In this book, we follow Victor and Eli, who are best friends and college students, and Victor is helping Eli kind of work on a thesis project where he's trying to discover if EOs, or extraordinary individuals, people with power, your X-Men type people are real, and basically trying to figure out how to create them themselves through near-death experiences. And we follow them in multiple different timelines. So we get a now, and then we get an in the past. And actually the college discovery is in the past, and then in their present we follow Victor, who has just gotten out of prison and is hunting down Eli, because Eli is the reason that he was in prison. So it's really cool seeing how these two went from best friends to mortal enemies, and we really get to play on who's the hero and who's the villain, and are you a hero of your own story even if you're seen by others as a villain. And it's a very jumpy timeline, so be wary of that. We go from like present to 10 years ago to 5 years ago to present to future. Like, it jumps a lot, but I really liked the way she did it. So definitely one I highly recommend. Another one of my favorites is Where Dreams Descend. This is the first in a YA duology, I believe, and it was fantastic. This is kind of a Phantom of the Opera meets The Greatest Showman. Like, it was so cool. Our main character is a showgirl, and she's a magician, but basically she wants more. She wants more than being confined to this house where she performs every night. And she wants to see the world. She wants more. And she's kind of trapped there by Jack. And we don't really know why. So eventually she escapes and kind of enters herself into this magical competition with stage magicians. And it is just so good. It has got a lot of like circusy vibes, which I absolutely adore. It's got some really cute romance, which I love. And it's actually got a really good male-female platonic friendship in here that never turns into anything romantic. No love triangles, none of that. So I loved it. The ending had me on the edge of my seat. Now I'm super excited for the second book to come out this year. Hopefully it lives up to all the love that I have for this one. Another of my absolute favorites this year was Kings of the Wild. We can't get through a video of mine without talking about Kings of the Wild. Like, you know that, right? This is a fantasy that doesn't take itself seriously. It is very meta. It is very humorous. It is just this band of mercenaries getting back together in their old age to go for one last tour to save the daughter of one of their band members. And it is amazing. It is literally a mix of classic rock and D&D. It's just so good, but in the midst of the fact that it's so funny and fun, it also has like really big heart, and I loved everything about this book. So it's one that I really think more people should read. Next up we have Sword of Kaigen, which is a standalone adult fantasy that is an Asian military inspired, and it stole and broke my heart this year. I have a full review for this one as well if you want to read it, but we follow Misaki, who is a like late 30s, early 40s, I think, mother, and she has 3 sons. We also follow her oldest son, Mamoru, and it is set in a world that is highly patriarchal, where she basically married for political reasons, and you know, she didn't want these kids, but she has it because it's her duty. And you know, women aren't warriors, but she comes from a background where she was a warrior, so it's just a lot of playing on that, and then grief and just family struggles. And I loved everything about this book. It was so fantastic. So if you have not read this, I highly, highly recommend you check this one out. It is actually self-published. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. So definitely go pick this one out. You have literally nothing to lose. And finally, my final favorite book of this year is The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. I read this entire series this year. The first one is still my absolute favorite, probably because it's the one that made me cry the most. But I highly, highly recommend you go pick up N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth series. Again, I have an entire video talking about why you need to read this series. It is set in a post-apocalyptic world where we follow a couple different characters. Our one, of course, that I love the most is a mother, but she is a grieving mother. She basically wakes up, comes home to find that her husband has murdered their toddler son and run off with their daughter. And the reason behind that is because she and her children are what they call orogenies, which are people that can control the earth. So they can make earthquakes and they can cause like fire to erupt and volcanoes, and it's like this whole thing, but they're seen as very dangerous and no one likes them. They're very persecuted in this world, so she kind of hides what she is, hides what her children are. And we kind of start out in the midst of that, as well as a global season, as they call it, so like an apocalyptic event. And then we also follow a couple other orogenies. We follow a very young girl who's just kind of coming into her own, and then we follow like a older adolescent 20-something orogeny who's kind of learning the ropes as she goes along, and it is just such a good story. It's really strange in the fact that one of the perspectives is told in second person, but that makes it that much more hard-hitting for me. It makes it make much more sense at the end because there is a reason it's told in second person. So I just love this series. Please pick it up. If you read nothing else from this list, this one is the one. Alright guys, so those were my top books of 2020. Let me know if any of these were on your top books, or if you've read any of them, what you think about them, and then let me know what some of your favorite reads for the year were down in the comments below. Alright, my name is Jessie, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!